Thank you so much for being here for the launch of this novel, Still Lives. Reshma, I want to start, though, with a previous incarnation of yours. You're an award-winning poet, a very distinguished poet, back in the UK. And this is a journey into novel writing. Can you just describe first the move from poetry to novel writing?
Thank you, Bee. Can everybody hear me? As you said, I write between genres. I write poetry, I write novels, and I write short stories. And I think I started my writing journey as a poet. And I think the shift was, there was no sort of specific roadmap. It was more an organic way of developing my voice. I felt in this particular book, I felt that the voice that came out was it demanded that it be written in prose form as opposed to poetry. But a lot of the emotional responses of the characters could be termed as almost poetic, interpretations of the life around them.
Okay. So let's look deeper into the novel. We have the character, so the main protagonist, P.K. Malik, is a businessman, very successful, a very handsome man, but his best days are behind him. He's having, would you describe it as a midlife crisis? He's really in a not good place. Yeah. And what we witness is his unraveling. And we're inside his mind as it happens. At some times, you're actually, it's quite an unflattering portrayal. Mm-hmm. Did you feel almost that you were being unkind to him?
Yeah, when I thought of PK, I wanted a complex and a flawed man, in a way. I wanted the reader to go on this journey and discover a man who's made up of lots of layers to him. So there are some nasty bits, but then also there are surprising bits of beauty within him, He's this, as you mentioned, he's going through this sort of midlife crisis, and he's almost free-falling through life. And while he's free-falling, he's attempting to snatch at, pockets of happiness and shards of beauty in a world that seems increasingly bleak to him. So he's heroic, but but he falls nonetheless without sort of giving any flaws, without giving any spoilers.
We have a star guest appearance. I'm just going to have to stop things right now because Amish is about to join us on stage. Woo!
Sorry, just
No.
What do I have to do?
Why don't you launch and then we'll pick up?
Okay. Should we do that? Okay.
So we're just recalibrating.
Yes. My apologies. Is this on?
Yeah.
My apologies for the delay. My signing took a little longer than expected. Sure. And hence, my apologies. Sincere apologies.
No worries.
So the conversation is to be continued, but we're going to do the big launch right now. So we added in a lovely bit of drama just for you. Thank you, Amish. Right, now that the book is properly launched, and fully in the world, we can get back into the nitty-gritty. So as I mentioned, P.K. Malik, our protagonist, is an unhappy man. He's approaching old age. He's embarking on an affair, and it's all quite tawdry. It's a little bit sordid. And I feel that you feel as a writer some kindness towards him, but you don't spare him, actually. But what's interesting, one of the themes that emerges is that of intergenerational toxicity. His father was a bully, and PK in turn bullies his son.
Sure,
Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Bee. I think as a writer, I'm really fascinated about families, the family unit as a source of inspiration. I find that families as a stage for our first sort of comedies and tragedies in a way, and the silence that exists within a family, the secrets that are withheld, or or the patriarchy, or the power struggle that happens in families. That's rich material for a writer. And in this particular family unit, the book is really about a multi-generation. It's a family saga. It's a family that's coming apart at the seams. And in a way, I wanted to explore how we are so shaped by our childhood, and how we, even though we want to escape from the pattern that had been imposed on us, we keep on repeating the same mistakes again and again. And there's a lot of foreshadowing in the book. And in a way, PK attempts to escape his father's disapproval, or he's trying to prove himself, even though he's a man in his mid-50s. But in moments of triumph and failure, what he hears first is his father's voice whispering in his ear.
Yes, and that's very acutely felt. You mentioned the word disapproval, because there's a beautiful illustration of the experience of living almost between cultures and between identities, because there's also the dreaded judgmental friends, the Guptas, who are those nosy friends that spot everything and are interfering, and that almost represents the trap that he finds himself in between these two cultures.
That's right. So the book is set in Manchester, and it's about this first-generation Indian immigrant family. And the reason I based it in Manchester is because I don't know if many of you have been there. It's quite a dynamic city, and it's a melting pot of several cultures. Several different communities have made it their home. And I also wanted to portray an immigrant person, PK, who is assimilated in a way. He's not the typical stereotypical image of an immigrant as being he's economically successful, he's quite sure of himself, and he's not needy, he's self-confident, he's vulnerable, but he feels he's assimilated. And at the other end of the spectrum, of course, is his wife, who portrays almost the opposite end of, she's always homesick for in India, so in a way she's leading two parallel lives. She hasn't quite left India, even though they've been living in Manchester for 25 years or more.
So Geeta is PK's wife, and she's very unfortunate in the sense that she knows that her husband is, well, she comes to discover the things that are happening. But before that, she has a sense of that something's not quite right. And yet the only time that we really hear her voice is the spaces that you've opened for Geeta's voice are the letters that she writes home. So she still maintains the bond with home and with family in a very successful way. That's a sort of nurturing bond for her. PK doesn't have that. Can you tell us about Geeta's letters?
Sure. So the novel is written from the point of view of, it's a male narrator, and the reader goes on a journey with him. And it's very much, we are seeing his family and the world through his eyes. And when I was portraying Geeta, I was very conscious of not being reductive about her, not making her two-dimensional, typical docile Indian wife who's almost like a doormat, or who's steeped in tradition. And
she's very assertive,
yes,
isn't she?
Yeah, she's homesick. I mean, she's all those things, but she's much more. And because we are seeing her through his point of view. I felt how, I was really pondering about how to do her justice, how to make her like a full-rounded character. And the way I sort of got around it was in these sort of series of letters where she actually displays a kind of steel, metal inside her. So she's not this sort of soft, she's soft, she smothers their only child, but there's much more to her.
And it's very important, isn't it, that voice is present?
That's right, yes. Yeah. I wanted the female characters in the novel to be full-rounded characters. They may have needs, they may have hungers of different kinds, but they're not so dependent on the male characters. Yeah.
And then there's another voice, or well, not really a voice, but a character that I loved, and that's the mango tree. Oh, and so PK attempts in, and I don't know if any of you have been to Manchester. Mm-hmm. Any Manx in the house? Come on. So we know it rains a lot. I'm from Yorkshire on the other side, but it does rain a lot. And PK, bless him, is trying to keep this mango tree alive in his garden in Manchester. So people from Manchester know that that's funny. And it's really not thriving. No. There's a recurring theme through. And he talks to it, he trusts it. In a sense, that's almost his letters back home, the relationship that he has with this mango tree. He kind of confides in it. And yet, it's there as a symbol of rootlessness, of trying to put down roots. And I wonder, given your own experience of growing up in and living in various countries and retaining your identities, does that mango tree have an important symbolism for you?
Yeah, so you're quite right. I mean, the mango tree, in a way, serves as a metaphor, actually. Actually, it's PK himself, I think. There's a scene in the book where he gets a book about, how to grow a mango, and the librarian said, but you can't grow a mango in Manchester. And then he says, but look at us Indians, we've come from the tropics and we are thriving here as well. So it's a metaphor for his own existence, and also it functions as a sort of umbilical cord to what he's left behind. And to go back to my own sort of upbringing, I've led quite a sort of, I've lived across continents, cultures, languages. So when I think about identity, I think of it as a constant work in progress. It's very dynamic and fluid, and it's always being shaped and reshaped by not so much geographical points, but by, the interaction, the sensibilities that, I sort of foist upon the things, the relationships with people.
Do you feel that in gathering subsequent identities almost with each place that you've lived in, that it generates something new and complete?
I think what it gives a writer is a sort of a kind of a peripheral vision, like an outsider's perspective. I felt like an outsider all my life, and I don't think of it as a negative, sort of a negative state of being. I feel that in a way, this detachment is important because it allows you to have, to hold a telescope in a way, to step back and to see things that if you're too embroiled in it, if you're too in the thick of it, you may not be able to.
Isn't there a wonderful quote about don't use the telescope, use the microscope?
Microscope.
It's the other way around.
Right.
You just reminded me, yes. And that is an extraordinary thing. As a writer, that's a superpower to be able to stand outside.
Just to be, not to act godlike and not to have an omniscient life, but not to be too attached and not to be too rooted to things,
I want to come to another of the big themes of the book, aging. And there's a fantastic quote by Gore Vidal, who said, "The biggest shock of my life was getting old." PK can't handle it.
No, he can't.
He just can't handle it.
He can't handle it. And that's, as you said, that's one of the themes, a major theme of the book is here are, characters who are sort of sliding into old age. They're not old, but they're just on that cusp, So there's PK, there's his love interest, Esther.
So Esther, I think, is managing it. Like she's her children have flown the nest. She's at that point in her life, and she wants to own it, and she's lost her friend.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
She's trying to launch more fully into her life, and PK can't quite commit either way.
It's like kind of, it's like that Dylan Thomas poem, do not go gently into the night, but, rage. And he's raging. He's a very handsome man, and he's quite capable of, he's still very much at the top of the food chain in a way, but he can feel that his youthful dreams are sliding away and that he'll never quite, he won't get there.
Is there any part of it that is, for you, a kind of morality tale?
It's not really, I didn't want to paint a novel which has black and white characters or there's good or bad. I feel that there's a lot of moral ambiguity, just like in real life, in how we lead our lives. We all want to be good people, but somehow, the choices that we make may not, So we, I wanted to. So it's not so much a tale of morality, but it's a tale about choices. What the wrong choice, what can it lead to?
And then back to the idea of aging, because sadly none of us escape from it. And so I'd like you to talk about what role literature has in illuminating or making us think about what happens as we age.
I feel literature is quite an antidote, actually, to the society we live in. Our society is very sort of youth-obsessed, social media, the world that we live. There's a celebration about youth, and what happens is that the elderly or the aging become almost invisible. They become like a shadow, and I resent that. I feel that there's...
Why should teenagers have all the drama, right?
And all the fun as well. And, I quite feel that, age is a number, but yet, it's still a number, So I don't like when people say that, 60 is the new 30. No, I'm saying 60 is the new 60. But then, that doesn't mean it's not the sign, it's not the sounding of a death knell, It's, society would have you believe that, no, that's it, you sort of exit quietly without making a noise. But I'm saying make all the noise you can, as long as you can.
Oh, that's a great message. There's a quote which, to my mind, crystallizes the book, and it's PK is reflecting on a comment that his mother made. His mother said, "Your father is a good man, but he never learnt to live." Yeah. And I felt that this was also true of PK. I mean, we feel his tragedy, really, and partly his rage. Yeah. Is there anyone in the book who is learning to live?
I think he's trying to live towards the end, and I would say the love interest, Esther, is trying to live. So it's that sort of last hurrah, in a way, I feel. They're successful, but yet they're not. They're deeply unhappy characters, they're deeply unhappy. But within that unhappiness, they're trying to swim to a certain level of, contentment.
Or self-fulfillment.
Self-fulfillment, yes, before the dream ends.
Now, I'm being very careful about spoilers, but there is a shock, and it's quite savage. Yeah. So, whilst carefully avoiding what it is that happens, can you talk around the pain that is inflicted, or is that too close to spoilers?
No, I'll try and avoid the spoiler.
You're going to have to buy the book, but I just wondered, it was a suffering almost too far.
Yeah, so in fact, the ending of the book, I got into so much trouble with that. Lots of editors and readers that said, but why did you do that?
I confess I did a little bit too. I was like,
no. So I think...
So I'm saying why?
Yeah. Why? So to be honest, when I was writing the book, I didn't really think of the ending, I mean, that's how I write. I never think of... there's no roadmap. It's never a structure, I always write in terms of, say, a scene or an image or particular phrase. So the ending caught me by surprise as well. And I felt that it's just, there was sort of I felt that it had to end that particular way. Okay. I felt it was almost like that's how the circle,
Okay, don't say any more.
Closed. That's it.
Now you really have to. I'm just going to leave that right there on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So it's called Still Lives. I love the cover. By the way, Reynard Press, beautiful publisher that we love. Yeah, we love. Still Lives suggests, obviously, the art, classic art composition. And I wondered if that was a reflection on both the art of writing, but also the art of life, the art of living.
Yeah.
Is that what you were reaching for?
Yeah, so in fact, the book, when I first started writing it, the original title was A Mouthful of Silence, that's what I thought. But then Will said, it's quite a mouthful of a title, so let's think of something, punchy. And so Still Lives, as you said, it refers to painting. So, and in this, I felt that the lives of these characters, the lives that they lead, is sort of frozen in a way. They're not moving, and yet there's so much happening beneath the surface. So they're still, and yet, they're in perpetual motion. But the motion is almost off the page.
Yes. Titles are a killer as well, aren't they? I think it's a great title. I'm going to ask you, right at the ending, to read a short extract from one of Geeta's letters,
Sure.
one of your choice, because I think it's fitting to end with her voice.
Oh, right.
I'd like to hear that. It's a bit tricky with the book and the microphone, isn't it? And we may have a couple of minutes for questions, so just a short reading would be perfect, and then we'll have time for a quick couple of questions from the audience.
So this particular piece is, this letter is towards the beginning of the book. And as we discussed, PK is quite contemptuous towards his wife. He thinks she's traditional, she's spoiling the son, and she doesn't understand him. But actually, she understands much more than she lets on. And the way, so there's a breakdown in communication between them, and the way we get inside her head and are aware about what's going on in her life is through the medium of these letters that she writes to her sister. So I'll read you a short extract from the letter towards the beginning of the book. Dear Lopa Didi, you won't believe what happened the other day. PK decided we should go to the lakes. The Lake District is just outside Manchester. We used to go there a lot when Amar was little. It's almost as beautiful as Kashmir. Anyway, our plans changed, and we went to a park near our house. It was a miserable day, raining as usual, and a young couple in the car next to us started doing hanky-panky in broad daylight. It was most embarrassing. This kind of thing would never happen in Bombay. But worse than that, they called us Pakis. We are just one big brown blob to the people here. They lump us all together and can't make out who is Indian, Sri Lankan, or Pakistani. Poor PK, he was very upset. He went straight up to the bedroom and slammed the door shut. I wanted to speak to him, but Amar needed me. So that's just... Thank you.
And yes, I love the way that that her voice, that she puts on a brave face.
That's right.
And that there's much more behind it than she's letting on.
Yeah.
Also the insights into life, immigrant life, and the responses of some local people. For example, no one can get her name right, just like those details. I think are wonderfully done. I'm going to see if there are any questions in the audience now. Please put your hand up. I hope we've got microphone. Yes, there's a microphone there. So put your hand up if you have a question. Somebody have a question? No, they don't have a question. Okay. Nobody? Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to just return to the craft of writing, really, and you mentioned the move from poetry, and that there are, of course, distillations of your sort of poetic form within this, and you can see that in the sentence structure. How long did it take you to write? Like, what was the actual construction of the novel as an experience for you?
Painful. I think all writers would say, writing is very, very painful. But this book took me nearly 5 years. But that's, there was writing, then rewriting, and multiple drafts. And the whole sort of attempt was, to create something that felt pared back, yet was full of emotion, that was powerful, but which didn't explain too much. That really relied on the reader to do a lot of the work as well, to get inside the mindset of this man who's quite complex and not entirely lovable, but yes, yet to feel for him.
We do,
Yeah,
we do, and,
yeah.
and that does take time. I don't think 5 years is excessive,
No.
actually. I actually hate people that write books in 6 months. They're just terrible people. And it takes that long to,
Yeah.
to spend time inside that character and develop those nuances and that sort of
Sure,
internal
yeah.
complexity.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say that I think you've done an amazing job, and I
Oh,
urge
thank you.
everybody to buy a copy of Still Lives by Reshma, who will be signing outside, just outside here now. So please join me in a massive applause for the
Oh,
book launch.
thank you.